Hi all. Today we'll be discussing about collection of data. So data collection is the first and most important step in statistics because proper data help us make correct decision and conclusions, right? So collection of data is the uncompromising first step in statistics. Abstract phenomena must be translated into quantifiable reality, right? So what is data? Data means information expressed in numbers. Okay. So now let's take a look into sources of data. Okay, so basically there are two main sources of data that are primary data and secondary data. Okay, so primary data is collected in first hand by the investigator. Okay, for a specific purpose. And the secondary data is already collected by someone else and reused for analysis. Okay, so primary data is original and specific to exact need, right? Because the investigator is directly going and through questionnaires or any other format, he'll be directly collecting the data that he needed. And the cost, definitely that will be high expense, right? And what about the speed? It is time taking process, right? Because collecting data will be a time taking process. And what about the secondary data? It's already exists there, right? Someone else has already collected and published the data. So we'll be using it based on our needs. And it has a general application, right? Because it is not collected for a particular purpose. Then it will be definitely cheaper. You can find it from reliable sources on internet, some websites, or books, or newspapers, etc. And it will be very quick, right? You can just find the data very easily. So these are the type of source. So next decision is whether to use a census method or a sampling method. So which method we should use for collecting the sample. Okay. So in a census study, the information is collected from every single unit in the population. So it has 100% coverage. Okay. It provides very high accuracy and it is expensive and slow. So even though it is highly accurate, it is highly expensive and also the execution is very slow. Okay. But in sampling, only few units are selected. Okay, so it only has a partial coverage. So it represents the population. Okay, so these samples represent the whole population, but it is faster and cheaper. Okay, so it is a cheaper alternative and it is faster in execution. So based on accuracy, maybe slightly lower. Okay, so we can't say that it will be 100% accurate. Clear? So these are the methods. Now, let's see how to select the sample. So there are two major ways to select a sample. One is random sampling and non-random sampling. So we have random and non-random sample. So random sampling is the mathematical neutrality that guarantees an equal chance for selection for all units in the population. Okay. And what about non-random sampling? It depends on the investigator's judgment. Okay, so directed selection will be it relies entirely on the investigator's judgment and the specific criteria to isolate the units. So this is how these two type of sampling works. So there are several methods of collecting primary data. Direct personal interviews involve face-to-face interaction and usually provide accurate information, but they are very slow and expensive. So what is our first method? The direct personal interview. So the response rate will be high, cost is expensive, and speed is slow. So it is ideal for clearing doubt and highly time consuming time. Okay. So what about the indirect one? So the indirect oral investigations gather information from third parties. So mailed questionnaires are useful for remote areas but often have low response rate. So the mailed questionnaire. What about the response rate? It is low. Cost is also low. And what about the speed? That is also low. So no matter like even if we mail it for 1,000 participants, we cannot assure that all the 1,000 participants will be sharing it back, right? So even though it is useful for remote areas, explicitly not suitable for illiterates. Okay. So what is the next option? We have the telephonic interview option, right? So how we will do that? So telephonic interviews are fast and less costly, but they have limitations because physical reactions cannot be observed. So response rate is fast, cost is low, and speed is high. But what is the limited use case? Impossible to observe physical reactions. Got it? Now let's see the anatomy of a flawless questionnaire, how to make a perfect questionnaire. So a questionnaire is a structural list of questions designed to collect information, right? So a good questionnaire should follow a logical order. Okay, so it should have a logical order. The flow must be guide the respondent naturally from the general to specific. Okay, clear? So questions should be simple, clear, and easy to understand. That is the second point. So it should be simple and clear. Questions must be used, accessible, unambiguous language. So it should not create any sort of confusion for the respondent. Okay. And what about the number of questions? Would you like to answer around 50 or 100 questions at a time? That will be too boring, and nobody will be willing to attend such kind of question, right? So we should always give fewer questions. So ruthlessly eliminate unnecessary data points to prevent fatigue. Okay. Then definitely you should avoid personal intrusions. So steer clear of deeply personal questions that cause abandonment. Okay. Clear? So these are the things you should make sure while you're preparing the question, right? And what is pilot survey? Why we have to do a pilot survey before you are doing the actual one? So before conducting the full survey, researchers often carry out a pilot survey, right? A pilot survey is a small scale test run with the questionnaire. Okay. So what is the purpose? The purpose is to identify problems, check whether respondents understand the questions, and improve the questionnaire before large-scale data collection begins. Right? So we'll have the questionnaire drafted. We'll do with a few members. Then we will check the result. So the concept is the pilot survey. The function, it is a controlled small-scale test of the questionnaire executed before full survey is launched. And what is the output? We can identify the friction points, test respondent understanding, and calibrate the instrument for mass deployment. Okay, so we can uh, make the questionnaire better before the actual survey. Okay, so now let's see the methodology decision tree, how the methodology will be working. So let's see how researchers choose the best method for data collection. Okay, so if the required data is already available, secondary data can be used. Otherwise, we have to collect primary data. Okay, and if very high accuracy is needed for a small population, a census method is preferred. Otherwise, sampling will be used. So the final choice also depends on constraints such as budget, time, and level of details required. So let's dig into detail. So first, what is the question we have to face? Is the exact data already available? If it is yes, we will be directly using the secondary data. Okay. And what if the data is not available? Mostly it won't be, right? Because nobody is going to conduct a study for our purpose, right? Our research purpose. So if our research is requiring a specific data, definitely we'll have to collect the primary data. So what is our next question? Is absolute 100% precision is required on a small population? If yes, we have to conduct a census. If no, we can go for a sample. And what is the primary operational constraint? We have severe budget constraint, deploy mailed questionnaire. So what if it is urgent time constraint? We can conduct a telephonic interview. And what if we need maximum clarity and depth? We can conduct a personal interview. So this is how usually the researchers will be fixing their method of data collection. Got it? Now let's see how to diagnose the collected errors or any collection errors. So errors can occur during the data collection, right? And they are mainly divided into sampling errors and non-sampling errors. So let's see what are sampling errors. So it is inherent variance, the natural expected deviation that occurs simply because a sample. So it's a rather than a full census was used. Okay. So it is a natural thing. Okay. And this happens because a sample is studied instead of the entire population. Got it? And what is non-sampling errors? It is a systemic bias or human mistake in the collection, questionnaire design, or data entry. Okay. So it can be happen due to our human errors or any biased questionnaires, incorrect data entry, something like that. Okay. So these errors can affect the overall reliability of data. So non-sampling errors are far more serious. They compromise the fundamental integrity of the data. So this is what you have to keep in mind. Clear? So that is all we have to learn about this chapter. So I hope it is clear for you. Thanks for watching.